Last time on Oz Hour.
Okay, last time on Oz Hour, they met with the Scarecrow and were like, yeah, all these bad things are gonna happen. And he was like, let's go talk to Ozma. So they go, and then they run into Jack Pumpkinhead and they're like, yeah. And then they go, and then they get there and Ozma's like, plucking her little roses, being like, yeah, this isn't that big of a deal. Like, we have certain things like fountains and stuff that we're going to go to and figure things out. So that's where they go. They go over to the fountain, and then she uses the fucking magic belt to make dust in the tunnels that all these bad guys are coming into. And so they come in, they're dying, and they're like, let me get that water. And then that water makes them forget everything. And then everything's okay again. And then they all get sent home through the belt once again. Makes no damn sense, but that's what happened. And then they go to Glenda because they're like, Glenda, this doesn't, we don't want this to happen anymore. We're done, you know? And she's like, yeah, I know. I actually have a book that writes everything down. So I already sealed it up. And Oz is sealed up and ready to go. The end.
Hi there, and welcome to episode 34 of Oz Hour, the only place where you can hear everything you never knew about the wonderful and strange land of Oz.
That's right. With the help of some alcohol, we will be discussing each of the 14 books in L. Frank Baum's Wizard of Oz series.
Today, we will be beginning Book 7, The Patchwork Girl of Oz, covering chapters 1 through 4.
We're your hosts, Blake Stone,
And Wyatt Swain.
and joining us as always is our resident Oz initiate, and they go, and they go, and they go, and they go, Hannah Aguirre. Hi.
Yeah.
Hannah, you just played last time on where you recapped the end of book 6, The Emerald City of Oz, right? Well,
Yeah.
Okay, thank God.
That's the only thing I remembered.
It took you 1 minute and 10 seconds to cover it, and I will say you're lucky we're not grading you tonight as we are starting a new book. Also, listeners, as usual, Hannah attempted to summarize the entirety of our previous book, The Emerald City of Oz, so stay tuned after the credits for that absolute 3-minute and 4-second masterpiece.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, it's
Highly recommend to
insane.
listen.
Before we started recording, Wyatt, you went ahead and whipped up some cocktails.
That is correct. Actually, tonight I prepared a drink that I call the Ruby Heart. The recipe for which can be found on our Instagram at Oz Hour Podcast, and the recipe for which also lives in my heart.
I will say it smells so good.
So here's the thing: Hannah doesn't like grapefruit, and this is a fresh squeezed grapefruit in here.
What?
Yeah,
We
so
did recently order like 4 pounds of grapefruit from a basketball
I
it's
team.
like
did
a
see
full
that big
bushel.
box.
A bushel,
Yeah.
a bushel, 40 grapefruit. Okay, let's slurp.
All right.
That's delicious and tart.
Whoa.
Yeah, grapefruit's
Do you like
good,
grapefruit?
bitch.
That's not what normal grapefruit tastes like.
That's because
Seventh book. Seventh book.
No, we're not doing that.
Seventh book.
Book 7, The Patchwork Girl of Oz, by L. Frank Baum, published in 1913. Prologue.
So this is the first book we've gotten that has a prologue. And basically, L. Frank Baum tells us he has been officially named the Royal Historian of Oz. Great title. Contact between Oz and the outside world was cut off at the end of the last book, as you know. But
3 years ago.
the children in... I feel like I usually say we're in the real world, but what I should say is in our part of the world, because we're on the same world. But in our part of the world, children were begging L. Frank Baum for more stories from Oz. And the children of the world suggested that L. Frank Baum use wireless telegraphy?
Yeah.
Telegraphy?
I would say telegraphy.
Okay. To contact Dorothy and ask her for some more stories. So, just so you know, we are receiving the story we're about to tell you.
This is direct from Oz.
It's direct from Oz. Because with the help of Glinda the Good Sorceress, communication was established, allowing L. Frank Baum to write more Oz stories because he and Dorothy can communicate by telephone?
It's like a telegraph. I don't understand really what it is. It would have been
it
an
the
easy thing
mirror?
to look up.
No.
It's not magic. It's earth science.
Well, it's important to know there has not been an Oz book for 2 years. But now, because L. Frank Baum invented wireless communication, you're getting an Oz book 2 years later, baby.
Damn.
It's actually crazy because you're right. Like, he's referencing a technology that did not exist. Like, you couldn't transmit something wirelessly like that back then, right? Is that crazy?
Without wires seems crazy.
Like a telegraph? Come on, man.
It's 1913. Come on.
Yeah. Come on, man. All right, and that is the end of the prologue. And Blake, what would you call that?
Prologue.
Chapter 1. Ojo and Unk Nunky.
We begin in the Munchkin land with a Munchkin boy named Ojo and his uncle, Unk Nunky.
Like Uncle Nunk?
Uncle Nunky.
No.
You like switched it. Like you flipped
Unk
it.
Nunk.
Uncle Nunk? No, Unk Nunky. So we really start with some dialogue.
Well, yeah, the whole first chapter is dialogue, which is unfortunate. But the first thing we hear is something very Oz, very classic Emerald City Dorothy, is Ojo is asking if they have butter. And Dorothy loves butter.
She loves butter. Unk Nunky says, isn't.
Which you might think that's crazy.
That's not what I. That's not what I asked.
Ojo's like, damn, no butter? Well, where's the jam then?
And Unk Nunky says, gone.
Where'd it go?
Ojo's like, you're telling me all we have to eat in this whole house is bread?
He also lists everything they don't have, all the way from cake to apples. So he's like, we don't have apples or cakes or lemons. We don't have any oranges or pieces of ham, no wings. He just goes off. And
that's how I feel in my kitchen sometimes.
that's how I felt today, honestly, for no good reason.
There's also a snowstorm coming. We should go to the store.
Yeah.
We are.
So Ojo's like, no bread. We don't have anything. All we have is bread. Unk Nunky strokes his beard. He says, all. So Ojo sits down by Unk Nunky and he just starts munching on his dry bread and thinking.
Yeah. He sits in a little stool. They're like looking out the window at their farm, or not their farm, at just their land, basically, because they're looking out at a tree, and it's a bread tree, which they have. Like, it's just like the lunch pail trees.
Okay.
It just grows the food that you can eat.
And so that's why they only have bread.
Well, yes. And furthermore, they only have one loaf of bread because there are 2 loaves on the tree, but they're not ripe yet. So they're eating their last
God, so they
bit
can't even
of
like
bread.
eat the bark or something.
No, the
No.
bread tree, it's not made of bread. It grows,
It just grows
bread.
loaves.
Oh.
So like the loaf is like green, and if you bite it, it's bitter. I assume.
Oh.
I don't know, but it is
What?
unripe.
Not ripe bread.
I know.
They're looking at this terrible image, and Ojo's like, Unk Nunky, why are we so poor?
Whoa.
It's very direct.
It's giving Kansas.
It is. Yeah, it's very innocent. But Unk Nunky is like not.
Yeah, we learned that Unk Nunky speaks in as few words as possible, which I'm
Yeah.
sure you've
I
noticed.
picked up on.
But since they live alone together, Ojo like understands him. Like he is basically a Nunky translator.
Yeah, he's an expert. He's the only one you would think, maybe even, who knew Unk Nunky.
You would think.
But
But Ojo's like, are you sure we're not poor? Like, we don't have anything. You sure about that?
yeah.
You sure about that?
But Unk Nunky in Infinite Wisdom is like house, and Ojo's.
I mean, yeah.
It's true. But then Ojo's like, well, everyone in Oz lives in a house. Like everyone has a house. Like so, like what else do you got? And he's like, bread. But Ojo also complains, and this is a very like good tie-in to our knowledge of Oz. No one in Oz will go hungry. Everyone has enough to eat, but like you have to be at the food
Yeah.
to survive.
So they live all alone in the woods. Their garden isn't growing any food. So Ojo's like, yeah, sure. Like nobody in Oz can starve to death, but we're not going to have any food unless we go find it.
Yeah.
Their garden's dying.
Yeah.
And Unk Nunky doesn't like this conversation.
He just kind of
Well,
shakes his
sometimes
head.
you have to face reality, Unkanaki.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
is just a little distraught.
But Ojo's just like, you know, if we don't leave tomorrow morning and go find food, we we could starve.
They'll be the
Like,
first hungry people in Oz.
Yeah. And so Unc Nunkey's like, where?
Okay, asking the right questions now.
So here's something interesting though, because Ojo is like, I don't know where. All that I remember in my life is in this house, and I've never gone anywhere else. And that reminds me a lot of Ozma.
Tip, yeah.
Well, yeah, it's Tip. Because Tip was like, I've always been with Mombi. I don't know why I'm here.
I started out quite skeptical of Nunk for that reason. I call him Nunk, I guess.
I call him Unk.
He's my
Unk is what you
Unky.
should call him. Hey, Unky.
Unky.
But no, that like made me very suspicious of him.
Yeah.
But then as we read on, I'm like, oh, he's fine.
Maybe.
So far.
We'll see about that.
Yeah.
Ojo tells Unc Nunkey he must know of some place because he's old. He must have traveled all over Oz in his younger years. And all Ojo knows is the house. Ojo says that he kind of describes for us all that he's able to see of Oz from where they are, which is the view of the mountain out the south, which is where the Hammerheads live, if you recall.
Hammerheads.
Oh, first book?
First
book.
Dang.
They got, yeah.
And then he can also see the view of the mountain at the north, where they say nobody lives.
Well,
I was
You-
like, I know someone.
well, you do know someone, and so does Unc Nunkey, because Unc Nunkey says one.
And Ojo's like, oh, yeah. One time it took you an entire year to tell me this story.
About one family. There's one family who lives on the mountain to the north. It's Dr. Pipt, who is the crooked magician, and his wife, Margot Lot.
They live
I thought you were
very
about to
high
say
up on the mountain.
Margot Robbie is in this book.
L. Frank
Played
Baum
by.
predicted Margot Robbie.
Imagine.
But so what we learn is that the good Munchkin country lies on the other side of the mountain, and it kind of like shares the border with the Winkies. The Gillikins on the other side as well, and that's where there's plenty of fruit and food to eat. So thinking about all the food in the other part of the Munchkin country, Ojo's like, it's kind of funny that we just live here in the middle of the forest all by ourselves, right?
And Unc Nunkey just says yes.
Just yes.
Oh,
Yeah. And Ojo's like,
very on board for that.
yeah. He's like, maybe we should like go on a visit to like Munchkin country, like see what they have to offer. There's all the jolly people there. Like we can get some fucking food. Like, please.
Unc Nunkey says, too little.
Yeah. His longest sentence that we've ever
Yeah,
heard.
it took a lot out of him to do that. He's like,
Exhausted.
too little.
But Ojo's like, hey, like I can walk as far as you. I can walk as fast as you. And also we have no food. So like we actually have to, for our survival, get out
Just
the fuck
go.
out of here. Yeah.
Unc Nunkey doesn't answer for a long time. Finally, Ojo's just like done waiting for a response. He lights a fire in the fireplace, and they just kind of sit there.
Yeah.
Um,
Ojo tells Unc to eat his bread, and then it's time for bed. And then Ojo goes to bed, and Unc Nunkey does not also go to bed. He sits up thinking for a long time
yeah.
about something, and the fire's flickering on his face. It's so
All
dramatic.
true. It literally says, but Unc Nunkey did not eat his bread. Neither did he go directly to bed. Long after his little nephew was sound asleep in the corner of the room, the old man sat by the fire, thinking. That's the end of the chapter.
Damn.
Wait, that's not my line.
And that is the end of chapter 1. Ojo and Unc Nunkey. And Blake, what would you call that, please?
Ojo, stir crazy stomach.
Chapter 2. The Crooked Magician.
So at dawn the next morning, Unc Nunkey gently wakes up Ojo and says, "Come."
Come. And
I
Ojo,
like Unc Nunkey.
he feels protective.
Yeah. I just like, fewer the words the better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people love that about him, as we'll find out. But Ojo dresses in the normal Munchkin fashion. So I don't know if you remember what Uncle Henry in the last book was told to wear in the Munchkin fashion. It was all blue. It was like a blue witch's hat with a pointed brim. It was like curled up boots, and that's what Ojo wears because that's what all Munchkins wear.
It's all just the blue shit, like blue silk stockings, blue knickers with buckles, blue vests braided with gold, blue wide-brimmed hats with bells around the brim that jingle when you move.
It's blue Pioneer. It's a all blue Pioneer,
pilgrim,
American Pioneer, Pilgrim. Sorry, not
but
Pioneer.
Ojo does wear blue like shoes where the toes curl up like elves.
Oh yeah.
Unk Nunky wears pretty much the same thing, but with boots.
Yeah.
Blue boots, presumably.
Yeah, and gold cuffs.
So Ojo sees that Unk Nunky did not eat the portion of the last loaf of bread that he left out for him last night. So Ojo cuts it in half, eats his half. Unk Nunky puts the other half in his pocket. Which, like, again, like what you were saying, like, I like Unk Nunky. I do too. He didn't eat his half of the loaf. Now his half was halved again, and he let Ojo eat his half. Unk Nunky rocks.
Yeah.
But they head toward the door, and again, Unk Nunky says, "Come."
Okay.
Yeah, they they're leaving, and Ojo is like super excited to see Oz. He's never seen anything except his own house, and for some reason, we learn that they leave the door unlocked. They just like close it, but it's not locked. And I guess it's because they live in a really safe neighborhood.
No, I think it's to show us that they live so far away from anyone. Like,
I guess
because they say like, oh, someone, like nobody's going to come along and fiddle with our door. And if anyone did come along, they would not even notice us because it's dark.
That's fair.
But they walk along. Ojo is over the moon. He's so done living in the woods. They walk for a while, and they make it to the bottom of the northernmost mountain, which is where the Munchkin lands on the other side. There's a path that goes left, and then there's a path that goes to the right, which is directly up the mountain.
Yeah. So they're about to like enter the wilderness because Unk Nunky's like, okay, we're going right that way, right up there. And that is right toward the home of the crooked magician.
Obviously, Unk Nunky does not say anything, so he's just like, I'm going this way, like in his head. And Ojo knows exactly why. It's like, we need fucking a place to rest. And these are their closest neighbors. They're climbing a mountain.
And they're wearing formal wear. They're wearing knickers. They're wearing clasp boots, a bell-rimmed hat. They're probably wearing a waistcoat. It's insane.
They're literally like free solo out here.
And this is not the first time I have a problem with like the clothes people were wearing in this book, but this is the first one, and I'm like, why are you hiking in this? Because you knew what you were gonna do.
That's actually an excellent point that I've never thought of. But these are Munchkins, and we don't spend a lot of time with Munchkins. We spend a lot of time with magical beings who can't sweat. So like this,
that's true.
So that's probably why it stood out to you.
They got lungs.
Unk and Ojo hike up the path all morning. At noon, they sit down and finish the last of the bread that Unk put in his pocket. So like, he halves the bread again. He is sharing his half of the bread with Ojo again.
That's good, man.
When Ojo has had a half and then another half, he's now had three-quarters of the bread.
Like he should be full for the day.
Unk Nunky just rocks, though.
So at this point, it's noon. And they started at daybreak. So it's been at least 6 hours. And then they have lunch, and then they hike 2 more hours. So this has been like an 8-hour hiking day.
Like they
almost
put in a
all
shift.
Uphill. Yeah, it's like, and they're not getting paid for this.
And they're eating little tiny pieces of bread.
Yeah, Unk Nunky has had one half of one half of one half of a piece of bread. Like, it's nothing at that point.
I have gone on 8-hour hikes. All of them ended up coming back down. That it wasn't just up. So I really wonder how far they actually cleared in that.
I mean, that's interesting because they're not doing hiking; they're doing like backpacking.
Yeah,
they are planning.
And
to stay
Ojo's
somewhere.
never left the yard before, so he must be like,
yeah, seriously.
Whoa. Okay. Something like that.
Definitely.
So after about 2 hours of walking, though, they finally can see Dr. Pip's house, who is their nearest neighbor. As they approach the house, they notice it's very large. It's painted beautifully. It's in the dome shape of the Munchkins. The gardens all around the house are full of blue flowers and trees, but like delicious blue cabbage,
blue lettuce, carrots. Everything is blue.
Bun trees, cake trees, chocolate caramel plants.
blue buttercups with real blue butter. It's insane.
And the house is like in a clearing on the mountain, but when you look around the house, it is just dense forest all around the house.
Wow.
And
Portland.
yes, yeah, very forest park. But they get to like the house. An old woman answers. She's wearing it all blue, and this is Margalot. So she is Dr. Pip's wife, and she welcomes them as any stranger. She would welcome them into her home.
Yep. Ojo asks if they can see the crooked magician.
Because he's very famous.
And Margalot, his wife, tells them that Dr. Pip is very busy, but they can at least have some lunch since they must have traveled so long to visit this lonely place.
And Ojo's like, yeah, we traveled a long way, but we're way lonelier than you.
Yeah.
It's a competition now.
It is.
She's like really surprised to hear this, and she's like, how remote can it be? Would you come from the blue forest? And Ojo's like, yeah.
And she's like, so you're Unk Nunky, also known as the Silent One, and Ojo the Unlucky. And Unk just says yes.
And Ojo's like, people call me that?
He's never heard that in his life because he's only heard one word at a time.
Well, he's only seen one person.
Yeah.
Who doesn't talk.
He doesn't have time to be making up nicknames.
But, like, Ojo, like, he's a little surprised, but he's also like, no, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that's who I
get
am,
it.
Ojo the Unlucky for sure. But Margalot tells Ojo, she's like, you're very unlucky to live alone in that dismal forest, but maybe your luck will change.
Yeah, you're leaving. You're getting out now.
Yeah,
just
you're like,
switch it
"Look at
around.
me."
Like,
Yeah.
get rid of the you'll just be lucky.
There
And
we
he's
go.
like, great.
Thanks for that beautiful advice, dear stranger.
Yeah.
So she feeds them piping hot stew, a dish of blue peas. There's sweet milk with a delicate blue hue, which sounds like rot.
Everything is blue. Yeah, blue stew.
Blue pudding with blue
I'm not
plums.
eating that.
So after they eat, Margalot asks them if they're seeking her husband on business or for pleasure, because he's the local magician, and local as in very far away from everything.
Yeah.
But it's important to note for you, Hannah, just keeping up with this chapter or the next few chapters, his name is Dr. Pipt. He is known as the Crooked Magician or just the Magician, but my notes might keep up with what the book says, which means I might say different things sometimes.
Okay.
But Dr. Pipt is the Crooked Magician.
Dr. Pip is crooked magician or magician.
You
Yes,
got it.
you got it.
Got it.
And his wife is Margalot.
And his wife, Margalot.
Margot Robbie.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the only way I'll remember it.
So she asks this question, business or pleasure? Unk Nunky just shakes his head. And Ojo's like, actually, we're just traveling. We only stopped here for rest and refreshment because you are our nearest neighbors, and we've been walking all day.
And Margalot thinks for a second, and she's like, well, you know what? Unk Nunky and Dr. Pipt were great friends a long time ago. Which, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah,
when were we I guess we
okay.
learned that here. And so
I
she's
guess
like,
he just
no.
really, he can't really explain himself.
it's true.
Honestly, though, this book does kind of a lot of that, where like you just get really important information in like a sideways comment.
Yeah.
I feel like
these first few chapters, sure.
I feel like he thought he was writing a play or something, where it's like the dialogue will reveal all,
And it is.
Um,
It's better than exposition, maybe, but
So Margalot tells them that the Crooked Magician is very busy just now, but as long as they don't disturb him, they can come into the workshop and watch him prepare a wonderful charm.
yeah. So they can come watch. He's like, don't fucking talk, but you can come back here. And so they go back and they get into the magician's workshop. It's the very back of the house. It's round because it's a munchkin building, but there's a fireplace. There's a bunch of windows, and over the fireplace are 4 kettles, like 4 big pots, and they are just boiling, and there's a blue log underneath them flaming, and they're just bubbling over. It's insane.
And Dr. Pipt is stirring all 4 of them at the exact same time.
2 hands and 2 feet but the feet are wearing shoes and there's spoons strapped to them. So he's just stirring with all four. I'm doing it.
Dr. Pipt is so crooked that he can use his legs just like arms because they point in such weird directions.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not that cute.
It was not the type of crooked I was thinking of.
No.
You wouldn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're going to discuss that, I think, later.
Okay.
But Unk Nunky walks right over to greet his old friend, thus breaking the do not disturb him rule.
Yeah.
And just places his hand right on his bald head.
Yeah.
Oh.
He does a full like palm of it.
And Unk Nunky says, "What?"
And insanely, the doctor is like, "Oh, the silent one," and he wants to know what I'm doing.
He doesn't.
He just
even,
knows.
He doesn't even look.
He
at
doesn't.
him.
He doesn't look up at all. And this though is kind of also fucking insane. Is he's like, "Well, I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm making the
Hold
power."
Brace yourself.
I'm sitting. I'm sat.
Okay, go for it.
I'm making the powder of life.
See, Dr. Pipt.
Is this a prequel?
Oh, that's interesting.
Dr.
That's
Pipt
interesting.
is the only one in the world who knows how to make the powder of life.
Oh.
It takes him several years to make a single batch.
And this batch is almost done. It's really close. And he's making this batch specifically for his wife because he's like, hey, like my wife wants it for a purpose. Like I'm making it right now. And like we're so close.
So Margalot takes Ojo and Unk Nunk over to the window seats to sit down and have a chat while they wait for Dr. Pipt.
Yeah, because he's almost
And
done. He's trying to wrap it
Margalot
up.
tells them that Dr. Pipt, the crooked magician, foolishly gave away all of the last batch of the powder of life to an old witch. Could you guess her name?
Mombi.
That's her.
And if you recall, in the book that introduced Mombi, The Road to Oz, they said that Mombi was making deals with a crooked magician.
Not
Yes.
the road to Oz.
Oh.
Oh.
What is it?
Oh, not the Road to Oz. Yeah, it's
The Marvelous.
Marvelous Land of
Marvelous.
Oz.
Yeah.
The Marvelous. Anyway, so he traded his powder of life with Mombi. He traded her for a perpetual powder of youth, but she cheated him, and the powder didn't work at all. If you recall, in the Marvelous Land of Oz, Mombi is like, I gave him some bunk shit. And
Yeah.
we'll see.
It's
if
all
this
corroborating the
powder
story.
of life even works.
It's
Like,
all being
L.
corroborated.
Frank Baum actually reread.
He's doing
one of-
callbacks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he reread one of his books.
It's
for
an
once.
inside joke. It's crazy.
It's always the Marvelous Land of Oz too.
Oh yeah. Well, that
I
was
feel like that changed
important.
everything.
Yeah. I mean, that was a
Um,
crazy book.
yeah. It was fucking
But-
crazy.
Yeah.
So Margalot's telling Ojo and Unk Nunky about how the powder of life trade, and Ojo's like, well, yeah, but maybe the powder of life doesn't work either. And Margalot's like, no.
No, yeah,
It's
we tested it.
perfection.
Actually.
But do you know what they tested it on?
Oh. A couch.
Ooh, good guess. It's not the Gump, but they tested it on a glass cat,
Oh.
and that cat has lived ever since.
That cat's alive today.
Yeah,
Where?
there's this.
In the dainty China country.
Somewhere
No,
around
she's
the house.
she's around here.
Oh, she just.
Ojo's like, whoa, a glass cat? And Margalot's like, yeah, she's like a good conversationalist, but she's super self-obsessed. She refuses to catch mice. We're a little irritated with her.
Yeah, they gave her pink brains, made of something that we don't learn about, and they gave her a heart made of a ruby, which is the inspiration for our drink, the Ruby Heart. But her brains are too smart and her heart is too cold because it's a stone.
Yeah.
So they don't like her that much. And the next cat they animate will be brainless and heartless.
So Ojo's like, let's move on, honey.
Yeah, he's like, let's
This is
get to it.
Frankenstein.
Give me a history lesson instead.
He's like, so what did Mombi do with the powder of life that she got from you guys? And Margalot's like, oh, well, she brought Jack Pumpkinhead to life, of course.
Yeah, he's one of Ozma's favorites. Don't you know about that?
Ojo has never heard of Jack Pumpkinhead.
Or
and
Ozma.
He doesn't know about anything about the land of Oz. He's only lived with Unc Nunky in the middle of the woods.
Yeah.
And so Ojo asks Margalot what special purpose she wanted to do with this powder of life that she has now.
She tells Ojo that she wants to bring her Patchwork Girl to life.
The Patchwork Girl of Oz.
The Patchwork Girl of
Oh.
Oz. Yeah.
Okay.
So here's where it's all gonna
New
start.
Dorothy.
So
Oh,
Ojo,
but Patchwork.
so Patchwork. So
Okay.
Ojo says, "Oh, what
What?
is that?"
Which is a pretty reasonable question.
Just like us freaking out and then him just being like, what?
Yeah.
So
Patch
Margalot,
what?
she's kind of like, I'll get her for you. I'll show her to you because she's kind of hard to explain.
She's probably had to do
But-
this to so many guests.
Yes.
So many people have come over and she's told them and she's like, fuck yeah, I'll go grab it
I
to show
guess
you. I can't
so.
explain.
She does tell Ojo that she's always wanted a servant to help with the chores, but since they live so far up the mountain, no employees want to come and work there all the time. So her husband was like, well, why don't you just make a girl or a servant? I guess he didn't specify girl. He's like, why don't you just make someone and I'll animate them with the powder of life and then they can be your servant. And she's like, oh my God, great idea. So at first she didn't know what to make the girl out of, but when she was rummaging for materials, she found an old patchwork quilt that her grandmother had made.
And then, I'm sorry, but I have to jump in because what happens is crazy. Because Ojo's like, for some reason, patchwork needs to be explained to Ojo. And I get it's 1913. Things were different. And they're also in the Munchkin country.
patchwork doesn't seem like something people wouldn't have known.
Yeah, especially back
L.
then.
Frank Baum was a land grabber.
Yeah. And so for some reason, she has to explain to him that patchwork is made of many colors, many fabrics. Like, it's like something that like is many, I don't know. It's something they've never used in the Munchkin country though. She explains
Because Munchkins love
they
blue.
love blue. So no one would ever fucking want to use
They're
that.
out here mixing colors.
Yeah.
This patchwork quilt that she found to make the Patchwork Girl with has been in a chest for at least 100 years, maybe
Yeah,
more.
she forgot
because
about it.
there's absolutely no purpose for it, which is why I'm like, why'd your grandmother make that? Was she a fucking revolutionist? So Margalot thought the patchwork quilt would be perfect for the servant girl because that way she would never be proud or haughty like the glass cat was, and she wouldn't be Munchkin blue.
Yeah.
And
They
And
are
Ojo-
really out here just creating things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's honestly,
seriously.
it's horrifying because at the beginning I really liked Margot a lot, but then the more I hear, the more I'm like, God,
yeah,
because she's like, oh yeah, like
It just
when-
all seems like a little experiment.
it is, yeah.
it is.
And she's like, oh yeah, when the Patchwork Girl comes to life, her colors will be so unpopular and so terrible. She'll never be rebellious. She won't think she's equal to us. She'll understand that she's an ugly little
Whoa,
Because-
whoa,
yeah,
whoa, dude!
know.
I haven't even heard some of those words before.
But she'll know it.
So, Unc Nunky is like, good idea.
Oh no!
It-
You didn't even say the second
It was
word.
hard for him to say because it was long.
Yeah.
And Margalot's like, yeah, so I cut up the quilt, I stitched it into the shape of a girl, I stuffed it. And she goes to a cupboard in the room, in the workshop. She opens the doors so that she can show them her Patchwork Girl.
And that is the end of chapter 2. The Crooked Magician. And Blake, what would you call that?
Blue dreams and patchwork schemes.
Chapter 3. The Patchwork Girl.
So Ojo examines the Patchwork Girl with wonder. She's taller than Ojo is. She's plump with her cotton stuffing. Her form is made from patchwork, the patchwork quilt. And Margalot also dressed her in a patchwork skirt and a patchwork apron with pockets. And
And this is the part where it gets kind of like, ugh, because she's going to come to life. And her feet, she has red leather boots with pointed toes just sewed on to the ends of her legs.
she doesn't have
and that's her feet.
Her feet are just shoes.
Her feet are shoes, boots. And then
her hands are...
This is giving like girl version of Scarecrow.
it kind of is.
It's very that. It's very that. We're even going to talk about how the ears are constructed, just like we did with Scarecrow.
Oh, God.
But her hands are stuffed to perfection to form these perfect little fingers with gold plates at the ends to serve as fingernails.
She's like
She needed
scratching your
that.
face, and it's a gold plate.
So since Margalot had plenty of time to work on the Patchwork Girl because the Powder of Life takes so long to make, she was able to take great care in making the head.
Yeah.
Wanna hear about it?
She spent a long time on the head.
Let's hear.
She had too much time.
Her hair is brown yarn. It hangs down to her neck in several braids.
So she's just a working girl. She likes a practical haircut.
Her eyes are 2 buttons.
Silver
sewn on.
suspender buttons.
Yeah, from a pair of the Crooked Magician's suspenders.
And they're tied in with black thread, so there's a big black pupil in the middle. And her ears, you might ask, are made from golden plates.
So gold is the most common metal in Oz.
Of course.
It can be used for various purposes because it's so soft and pliable. So she just pounded some down into the shape of ears and sewed those on. And I don't love this next part.
Horror.
Oh.
Patchwork Girl body horror?
This is patchwork body horror.
Oh.
Because the woman, the only thing the girl is missing is a mouth.
Uh-oh.
And so she cuts a slit in the girl's face.
Then
She
she sews 2 rows of white pearls on the top and bottom to serve as teeth.
and then a plush velvet tongue.
Ew.
And
She
then,
did not need that whole ass mouth. And I do find it interesting that Dr.
Velvet?
Pipt and Margalot gave, like, they talked about their glass cat, who they gave brains and a heart. And now the Patchwork Girl has a mouth with working teeth and a tongue. But Jack, the Sawhorse, and the Gump never needed any of those things.
they brought together the fucking.
Does she eat like? Will she?
She
Dude.
I guess
will.
we'll find out. I don't know.
I mean, she can't. Nothing from the Power of Life has had to eat.
It's like, well, then
But
why
this
does
is
she
the
need like a
closest
mouth
thing.
like that?
And a tongue, so she can form words, I guess. Ugh.
That doesn't.
So the Patchwork Girl's face, it's made up of many colors: yellow, blue, red, purple. So it's kind of hard to think of her as strictly beautiful because she has so many colors on her.
Yeah.
But Ojo says that Margalot should have made her face pink instead.
Which I guess is supposed to mean skin tone.
I think so.
Which is interesting.
Margalot's like, yeah, well, I didn't have any pink, and that doesn't matter because she's not meant to be beautiful. She's
Yeah.
meant to work.
She's like, I don't care what the fuck she looks like. She's gonna clean my house every day. And Ojo's like, well, what about like her brains? Like, what does she have for brains? Because we already learned that the glass cat has pink brains. So Margalot is like, oh my god, I totally forgot about brains,
Whoops.
which is insane. Her husband's been working on a Powder of
Yeah,
Life
it's
for
like you had so
years,
much
and she
time.
forgot about brains. It's yeah,
I
it's
hate her.
annoying.
And like, I don't think we're supposed to hate her, but unfortunately,
I
he
liked
made,
her before.
He made her super hateable.
I liked her before.
She's like, oh my god, thank you for reminding me about the brains. But I don't want to give the Patchwork Girl very good brains because all she needs to do is be a good servant. Unk Nunky, he says, wrong.
Well,
Yeah, that's how I felt.
you might wonder why he would have said wrong.
Ojo translates
Let's hear
for
it.
Unk Nunky, and he's like, what he means is that a servant needs good brains to properly obey and understand your tasks.
Yeah, when you tell her directions, she has to be able to understand them, but it will be a task to get the measurement right is the thing.
Margalot's like, you're not wrong, but I do want to find like a delicate balance so that she
Yeah.
doesn't become high and mighty.
Yeah, because she really is really worried about her being like the cat, basically.
Like over. Oh, I see. Okay.
Like, yeah, being like, oh, like, I don't have to do this. I have enough thoughts of my own. But Margalot goes to a large cabinet. She throws it open, and inside there's a bunch of like tiny little blue bottles, and each bottle has a little label on it. And Margalot's attention and hands, and everybody's attention, go to a section called, quote, brain furniture.
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 This had me looking up the definition for furniture, and I
guess
got the results I expected.
I guess, yeah, if something is furnished, it's decorated and filled with. So I guess.
Well, okay,
brain
that does make
fillings.
sense. So the bottles on the shelf are labeled obedience, cleverness, judgment, courage, ingenuity, amiability, learning, truth, posy, and self-reliance. Margalot pulls down the bottle labeled obedience.
Yeah, believe it or not, Margalot is going for the obedience one for her servant.
Not fucking surprised.
She pours several grains out into a small dish. So the brains are little beads, and she just like sprinkles them into a bowl.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
And then she puts it in the microwave, and then out comes a girl.
Yeah,
Out
exactly.
comes a goyle.
Right after the microwave. But she starts with obedience, and of course it's like, sure. So then she also adds amiability, so like being like nice to people.
After she pours obedience, amiability, and truth, Margalot decides, yeah, that's enough. The Patchwork Girl doesn't need anything else. That's all she needs. She needs to be friendly, she needs to be honest, and she needs to obey. Unk Nunky walks up to the cabinet. He puts his finger on the bottle marked cleverness and says, little.
And and Margalot
Little.
agrees. Yeah, he's like,
Widow.
little bit. But Margalot's like, yeah, like I get what you're saying. Like she should be at least a little bit clever. Like I'll put some in. So she's about to do that. But then from the other room, from the workshop, the magician is calling for her. He's like, quick, Margalot, come help me. I need help. And so she fucking books it into the workshop.
Yeah, she goes over. She helps him take the 4 kettles off of the fire. And inside the kettles, the liquid has all boiled away. And in the bottom of each kettle are a few grains of a fine white powder.
Yeah.
So Dr. Pip takes the powder from each of the kettles, pours it into this dish, and like mixes it up. It turns out to be like a handful of white powder.
And Dr. Pip was like, this took me 6 years to make this powder. And even just this handful is like worth more than a whole kingdom. Like this is the most valuable thing you've ever been near. And he's kind of going off, and Unk Nunky is like obviously very interested. And so is Ojo, but Ojo's also like, what about that Patchwork Girl's brains? Because it seemed like you were turning her into like a mindless, like obedient servant.
Yeah.
So he goes to do some justice.
He doesn't think
Ojo
it's
does?
fair.
Ojo does.
Yeah, Ojo,
he sneaks
Ojo
away.
like never really left the cabinet. He doesn't think it's fair that she's only getting obedience and kindness. So Ojo adds a little bit of every single bottle to the dish.
Ojo!
Yeah.
Nobody notices him fiddling around with the brain furniture. And then after he's done doing this, which I'm surprised that after only pouring 3 things, they wouldn't notice that he poured a little bit of everything.
That's
onto
what
that
I
heap.
thought too.
But Margalot comes back and she's like, oh, I was doing brains. So she returns to the cabinet of bottles. She pulls down the bottle of cleverness and she adds some.
And Ojo is like, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh
Why
fuck,
did I
oh
do that?
fuck,
Why
oh
did I
my
do
fucking
that?
god.
Gonna be the smartest person I've ever met.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. He's like, oh my god, like, cause he didn't just put a little cleverness in, he put a little of everything, and then he gave a dollop of cleverness. So he was like, oh my god. And Margot,
he literally is telling himself like water off a duck's back. Like
yeah, he is
he
trying
is
not to
like,
lose it.
there's no such thing as too much cleverness. It's
Yeah.
fine.
He's making
it's
it make
fine.
sense to himself.
Yeah.
And like he could have and should have probably said something, but before you know it, Margalot takes the dish full of the brain powders. She goes over to the Patchwork Girl, she rips her head open, and then she pours the powder in and then stitches her back up good as new.
Yeah, but it's fine
And
because
it's
she's not
just
alive yet.
made.
Like it's not that morbid because she's not alive yet.
Yeah.
But if she was alive, Yikes.
Yeah.
Yikes. Hopefully she was put under.
But Margalot tells her husband that the girl is all ready for the powder of life, but the crooked magician tells her that the powder won't be ready for use until tomorrow morning. But he's like, at least it's cool enough now, we can bottle it. So I think this is really cute. He takes a gold bottle with a pepper box top and fills it with the powder. If you recall, it was described in The Marvelous Land of Oz that Tip had a pepper box full of the powder of life.
Yeah.
But I always pictured that as like one of those big ass like Morton's sea salt boxes.
Oh.
Yeah,
but
that's what I would
I
kind of
think
picture.
when he was saying pepper box, he meant just like a salt shaker. Like a
I
pepper
imagine
shaker.
like the salt shaker that looks kind of like a like coffee mug, and it has the handle with
Oh,
the,
yeah,
the
it's like-
top with the holes.
Oh,
That's what
okay.
I was imagining my whole
That's
life.
not
It's a
what I
little
was
in between.
imagining, but I do like the reference to the original word.
Yeah.
But he bottles it. He puts the bottle into his cabinet. He locks it up. And finally, Dr. Pipt is like, well, it's nice to be done with 6 years of stirring those kettles.
Yeah.
So let's sit down and visit with Unc Nunky.
6 years he's been doing that.
Just with his arms and his legs.
yeah, it's so bad.
Jeez.
But he's like, yeah, I'd love to talk with Unc Nunky. And Ojo's like, you're going to have to do most of the talking. Unc Nunky is the silent one. But Dr. Pipt is like, oh, I know. That's what makes him so nice to talk with. Everybody else talks too much.
Yeah,
Which is just classic L. Frank Baum, I feel, honestly.
it is. And the magician is like, okay, let's like just go over and sit down. But Ojo says, hey, like, magician, don't you find it annoying to be so crooked? And the magician is like, oh, I'm quite proud of being so crooked because many magicians are accused of being crooked, and I'm the only genuine one.
Ba-dum-bum.
Genuine.
But he is crooked.
But
He's
honestly,
super crooked.
Ojo is like looking at him, and he sees Dr. Pipt sit down in his chair that is designed to be crooked to help his body. And when he sits down, one of his knees is under his chin. His other knee is by his lower back.
The small of his back. It
Like-
must
Oh.
twist around.
Oh.
Yeah. But he doesn't look miserable. He just smiles.
It's
He's
just the way his
that's
life is.
how his body is
Yeah.
for whatever
Yeah.
reason. And the Crooked Magician explains a little bit of Oz
History
politic
at
to
this
us.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he, for no particular reason.
Yeah, he just says it.
Yeah, he's like, oh, well, like, when maybe he's trying to protect himself because he's like, hey, the only reason I'm doing magic is like my own amusement and purposes. Like, earlier or before, way too many people in Oz were doing magic, and Ozma said, hey, that's enough. Way too many of you are doing magic. We're not doing that here
We've had a
anymore.
problem with wicked witches.
Yeah, we've had
We-
wicked witches. We had a Mombi. We've had all sorts of shit. So actually, no. Only Glinda practices magic, and Glinda never hurts anybody. Also, the Wizard of Oz, who is Glinda's assistant, basically at this point.
Yeah.
So whatever.
His magic is excellent at this point, and he is Glinda's right hand man.
Yeah.
But the Crooked Magician, he's allowed to use magic for things around the house, like
Yeah.
a glass cat to catch mice or a patchwork servant girl. He just can't do it professionally.
Yeah, he can't use it as his job. So that's great, honestly. That's a very common sense like stipulation, you know, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
he's not selling it.
Yeah. And OJ's like, wow, that's cool. But like, also magic in general is very interesting. That must be a really cool thing to like study.
Yeah.
And-
Dr. Pip's like, it's super interesting. I used to perform magic just as good as Glinda's. Some of my best work includes the powder of life and the liquid of petrification.
Oh.
Yeah.
The-
And
It doesn't sound useful. We get a lot of information about it. It just makes things solid, like marble.
it turns whatever it touches to marble. So the examples we have are that there were Kalidas attacking him, and he threw the liquid on them, and they turned to granite, and now they're yard decorations.
Oh,
The other
giving
one,
Medusa.
it is giving Medusa.
Medusa.
And the only other thing is there's like a wooden table in the room, and he's like, hey, this looks like wood, right? And he's like, no, it's fucking made of granite, and it'll never break, it'll never wear down.
L. Frank
It's always
Baum,
granite.
recently learned about petrified wood. I don't know.
I guess so.
He's obsessed.
But Unc Nunky, he's like, fine.
Yeah, he likes that.
Just then, they're scratching at the back door.
Rats.
A shrill voice calls, let me in!
Ew.
Hurry, let me in!
Margalot goes over to the door. She doesn't open it. And she calls through the door, act like a good cat and I'll let you in.
And the cat says, meow. How's that, Toots?
Yeah,
Or something
Your
like that.
Highness.
Yeah.
Just
Margalot
playing the part.
opens
Yeah.
the door. A cat enters, walks into the center of the room, and stops because she sees Ojo and Unc Nunky.
Yeah, very cat to me.
Unc Nunky and Ojo can't help but just stare at the cat because, don't get mad, it is the most peculiar thing they have ever seen.
And that is the end of chapter 3, The Patchwork Girl.
Oh,
And Blake,
okay.
what would you call that?
The cat's meow.
Aw.
Ooh. Chapter 4, The Glass Cat.
The glass cat, as you may have imagined, dear listener, is made entirely of glass.
Clear as a window, or so we're told.
Completely
Do
transparent.
they clean her?
They must.
She
must.
probably
Or
cleans herself.
Oh, actually,
Oh.
she does clean herself. She cleans
Yeah.
herself like a normal cat, which is bizarre. But she is so clear. You can see the ruby heart in her chest. You can see the pink jewels that make her brains.
Oh.
She has two
She has
emeralds
emerald
for eyes.
eyes.
Other than those
Oh.
things, she doesn't have any color. She's just clear. Her tail is made of spun glass, and it's beautiful, but it sways like
Yeah.
a cat's tail.
It's giving insanity.
I wanna
Because you can't
see.
imagine.
I ate some psilocybin, and I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
um,
But the cat is like, well, magician, you must have forgotten your manners. Haven't you introduced me yet?
Yeah.
Whoa,
this
she
cat's
does have a mind of her own.
fucking evil.
Dr. Pipt is like, oh, so sorry, Glass Cat. This is Unc Nunky, the descendant of the former kings of the Munchkins before the country became a part of the land of Oz. Whoa!
Like,
Whoa,
what?
That's a lot of
Unc
information.
Nunky is the descendant of Munchkin kings?
Why are they out there just by themselves
Why are
starving?
they out there?
Well, you wonder. You would wonder. And we will continue to wonder.
The cat is sitting there cleaning herself, and she's just like, he needs a haircut.
and Unc Nunky just says, true.
And the crooked magician, he's like, well, just so you know, Glass Cat, Unc Nunky has lived alone in the forest for years, and though it's a barbarous country, there are no barbers.
Yeah,
Dun-dun-dun.
that's it.
I'm done. So the Glass Cat's like, yeah, who's the dwarf? The magician is like,
That's
not
a child.
That's not a dwarf. That's a boy.
Not a fully grown person.
But
Yeah.
he's like, here's the thing, Glass Cat. You've never seen a boy before. And so he has to explain to her that he's small because he's young, but he's going to keep growing with age. The Glass Cat is like, is that magic?
And the magician is like, yeah, it's nature's magic, which is the best magic. Unlike the magic that made you, because you actually suck. You're impudent and cold-hearted, and you'll never grow.
Yeah, and also we've
Oh
seen
my god! No
we've-
wonder they're trying to make a fucking something completely opposite of
Well, yeah,
this.
Right.
The cat literally is like, I wish I wasn't even born.
Oh
I didn't
my
want to
God.
be in this world.
Honestly, though, that's their
it's
fault.
the gum.
It is.
Yeah.
She's like, I wander in your gardens all day. I come home and I listen to you and your fat wife go on and on and on and
Literally,
on.
it's a quote.
Like it's like they're in like a triad relationship.
Yeah,
She's
what
like,
the-
I'm pissed with all of you.
But the magician's like, hey, the brains I gave you are too fucking good for you. That's why you can't think right.
She says, take them out.
knows
Take them
too
out.
much.
Yeah, he's like, put pebbles in my head.
Yeah.
Take them out. And he was
Please.
like, I'm going to fucking try, but first we're going to get the Patchwork Girl up and running.
He's like, that's actually a really good idea. I don't know why I didn't think of that.
and then the
I
cat says,
actually spent all these years trying to make a whole other being
Yeah.
to make myself feel
I've
better.
been pretty busy for the
because
last
you've been
6
making me
years.
feel bad.
Well, the cat thinks the girl looks fucking awful.
Yeah, she's like, you're gonna bring this thing
Of
to
course.
life.
Yeah, and the magician's like, it doesn't matter if she's ugly. Like, she's just a servant, and you have to treat her respectfully because, like, she is going to be like the servant, and you are the cat.
The cat, whose name is apparently Bungle, is like,
Bungle.
no, I'm not going to respect a potato sack.
Yeah.
And Bungle's like, why don't you make her pretty like me? I'm so pretty to look at.
Yeah.
And then she goes into the mirror and she's like, aren't I? Oh, I'm so pretty. You did her so dirty. I'm so pretty.
Yeah, she kind of goes off, and Margaret is like, "Hey, she's pretty, like considering she's made of my grandmother's quilt, so she looks pretty good. And also, like, she has more colors than the rainbow, and so the rainbow's pretty, so I win."
Bungle stretches. She lays down. She's like, whatever you say. Just feel sorry for the girl is
Yeah.
all.
She's just sorry. And then they all go to bed because that night Ojo and Unk Nunky are gonna stay at the magician's house and just chill out that night. And
Has
they're
it only been one day?
It's been one day. So
Oh my God.
we met Unk Nunky and Ojo last night, and this morning at like sunrise they left their house.
so it's been like
Oh.
a day and a half.
What the?
And
But, so they're spending the night with Dr. Pipt and Margalot, and Ojo is so happy about this. He has never seen anything other than the forest and Unk Nunky.
Yeah.
Those are the only two things he
Never.
knows.
Yeah.
All he knows is forest, Unk Nunky, eat hot chip, and lie.
This
Yeah.
is a lot.
yeah, and that's the thing is he's like, man, like I just saw more things than I've ever even known.
And
existed.
tomorrow, he's going to see the Patchwork Girl get
Yeah.
brought to life, and he's going to get to spend some more time with that glass fucking cat.
Yeah.
His mind is blown.
And that's not even, there's so much more.
So here's what we learn, because there is so much more. When the Munchkins decided to merge with the rest of the land of Oz after Ozma became the ruler, Unk Nunky, like the heir to the throne of the Munchkins, was like, I'm just going to retire with baby Ojo in the woods where nothing unusual ever happens.
Yeah, they just went to live in the Blue Forest alone.
He could
we don't
have
know
been
why.
the king of Munchkins. So he moves along. Ojo's grateful that he and Unk Nunk started to run out of food to eat because
Yeah.
otherwise he never would have left
Yeah, if
the
I was
Blue
Ojo,
Forest.
I'd be like, why'd you do that?
What?
Yeah, and that's what
Why'd
like
you
makes
kept
me.
me here?
It makes me think of Mombi and Tip, where I'm
Yeah.
like, "What's
Yeah.
your deal, Unk Nunky?" But he does seem like a sweet old man. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's just
But-
what he wanted. He didn't think about
Yeah,
so much of what.
like
The
this
other-
kid's gonna grow up.
Yeah.
But Ojo is so excited he hardly sleeps at all that night. Everyone gets up the next morning. Margalot cooks a delicious breakfast.
And she's a great cook. And she's like, hey, this is the last thing I'm going to cook for a while.
Okay.
Because after this, we're going to have the Patchwork Girl come to life. She's going to clean all the dishes and she'll be cooking from now on.
This whole like announcement is giving me very Rocky Horror, where it's just everyone standing around while Frankenfurter's like, I'm going to make a boy, you know, like I don't know. It just felt very like self-important, but
Honestly,
in a dramatic
this whole
way.
thing has been giving me like a
Yeah.
little bit of Frankenstein.
Honestly.
Yes,
type
yes.
of vibes.
Oh, it is Frankenstein for sure.
Yes.
And it is also the self-importance of it because it is like, she's like, oh, like, I'm the main character. You guys came here on your way. And to be fair, they were already making a Patchwork Girl. like, they
that's
are
just
the main
what
characters.
they were doing.
Yeah, this has
Um,
nothing to do with Unk or Ojo.
But Margalot says that the Patchwork Girl's first chore is going to be to wash the breakfast dishes and dust the house. She is
Leave the girl
excited.
alone. Leave her alone.
That's what she's made for,
I know.
man.
No.
Like,
No.
what you're gonna say? Free the Roombas next?
if they were brought to life.
Yeah, well, I never
But-
put a little powder on them.
Yeah.
Dr. Pipt is like, oh, by the way, Margalot, I saw you getting some brains for the Patchwork Girl. What qualities did you give your servant?
Oh my
Margalot-
gosh, I forgot.
Yeah.
I forgot about everything else.
Margalot's like, well, I didn't want her to feel above her station like Bungle does, so I only gave her the qualities required of a good servant.
Yeah.
Ojo's palms are sweaty.
He's
Oh my
sweating.
God. I'm sweaty.
Yeah. He's like, I really should not have fucked with those brains.
When the intrusive thoughts win.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
Yes.
He's like, why did I do that? He's like, okay, so if I tell them what I did, they're going to be mad. Or I could just be like, what's done is done, but then I'm going to feel guilty.
But he's also like, I think Uncle Nunky saw me anyway. So like, and he didn't say anything, but like he never says
But Uncle
anything.
Nunky never says
But-
anything at all.
It's already
So
caught.
he's like just rationalizing it all. And after breakfast, they all go to the workshop, and the cat is lying in front of a mirror, and the Patchwork Girl is just lying limp and dead on a table.
So Dr. Pipt is all like, all right, let's work some magic.
Oh
Yeah,
my
he's like, you
gosh.
guys are about to see something fucking insane. No one else does this. It's just me. And then he's like, now start some music. Because he wants the first thing the Patchwork Girl hears to be music, like a beautiful music.
So Dr. Pipt goes over to the phonograph and turns on a record.
He puts on a technology that is unheard of.
Yeah, I was like, what is that?
Yeah. He
Who
winds it
the
up.
hell is L. Frank Baum?
So
But he has to wind it up. It's like screwed onto a table and then has like a big gold like phone on it. So it's just like a normal, what you'd think of as a gramophone.
Margalot is like, well, the main music she's going to be hearing is my orders, but I guess it's okay to start with a little orchestration.
Yeah, she's like, well, the only song she's gonna hear is me telling her what the fuck to do.
Mhm.
But yeah, sure.
So
like,
the music
let's give her
plays.
music.
The music plays. They all gather around the Patchwork Girl. Bungle even comes a little bit closer because
Yeah.
she's curious. Dr. Pipt says, all ready? Margalot's like, everything's ready. Dr. Pipt leans over the Patchwork Girl and he sprinkles the powder of life over her head and arms.
And that is the end of chapter 4, The Glass Cat.
Damn.
And Blake, what would you call that?
Let's play God!
And that is the end of our episode for today.
Thank you for listening to Oz Hour. Please join us next time as we continue with Chapter 5, A Terrible Accident. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Oz Hour Podcast for the latest on everything Oz. Oz Hour, created and hosted by Blake Stone and Wyatt Swangham. Co-hosted by Hannah Aguirre. Audio production by Charlie Johnson. Theme music written and performed by Rudy Klobus. Cover art by Valentin Lucas.
Last time on Oz Hour.
Okay, so the whole fucking book. They start off in gloomy old fucking Kansas. Everyone's broke. No one has money. Boo-hoo. Dorothy goes to fucking Oz and tells Ozma all these things. And she's like, bring him. Bring him. Bring everyone. Come on. And so fucking Uncle Henry and Uncle M show up. They're scared out of their goddamn mind. That's an Uncle Hen. Anyway, they all show up and fucking they hate their lives. They hate it. They're like, we got nothing to do, no fun, or no, we're bored. And so they're like, okay, get the fuck out of my house, you Shaggy Man, Star Wars, the guy with the mustache, green guy, Ambi. No, not Ombi Ambi. Oh no, yes, Ombi Ambi. Who else is in there? The wizard. Anyway, yeah, they're all there, and they go onto their journeys where they meet all these crazy people like the Cotton Clips, who are weird and interesting. We don't need to talk about them. And then we run into the Rigonimals. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And they are like puzzle pieces, I'm pretty sure, that fall apart. I'm pretty sure those are those ones. And if they're not, there's other people that are the fucking they make expect me to know way too many people in this book, honestly. But they meet those people, and then Dorothy gets lost. She meets Utensions, and and she gets captured by them, and then she runs into Bread, and then she runs into Bunnies, and then she runs back into the gang again, and they're like, oh, hey, welcome back. Here we are. Ha ha ha. And who else did they meet? Maybe they meet other people. I honestly don't remember, and I'm just going to keep moving forward. And they go to the Tin Man, the Tin Woodsman, and they are learning about oh my God, I even forgot to bring up all these evil people. There's General Guff. He meets all these evil people, and they're all gathering to destroy Oz. I'm just going to move past that. I'm not going to give any more information. Anyway, so they go to the Tin Woodsman, and they meet with the Scarecrow, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, like this horrible thing's going to happen. Oh yeah, and Ozma also knows about it because she like looks in the mirror and sees like that everyone's like getting together and planning things, and she's like, oh cool, they're gonna destroy Oz. NBD. And then I'm back at Dorothy and all them. They end up going back to Oz. Ozma's being chill, and then they defeat them by making them drink forgetful water, and they seal up Oz and call it a fucking day. Done.